Welcome, welcome. We have another epic episode of The Weird Way. I am beyond excited for this episode. I'm joined by a dear sister of mine, and I know this conversation is going to bring so much gold, so many codes, and just open up so many possibilities within your own world and within the collective as well. Today we have Myra Medhurst with us, and sister, it is such a pleasure to have you here, a priestess, a new earth leader, a seven-figure uh, ascension and enterprise mentor. It is just so beautiful. Welcome to the Weird Way.
Oh, Dean, brother. I'm so ready. I'm so ready to weave some magic with you. And thank you. Thank you for the invitation to share my journey, my energy, my transmission with you, your viewers, and your listeners. I could not be more excited.
Thank you, thank you. So I really wanted to start off going into the deeper end a bit because I know we both feel this, that there's a big shift happening in the world. There's a change in the collective consciousness within the individuals, and there's something else arising within the collective field. And I know from my own awakening experience, it can be jarring. There can be so much happening, but there's also this curiosity of like, is this awakening? Why is everything shifting at the moment in this point in time?
Oh, that's a meaty question.
Mm.
We have an hour, so I'll give you the mini crash course, hey?
Yeah.
Um, there's this beautiful dance that our planet and humanity go through. And one thing I'm incredibly gifted with and very honored to have this ability is to see repeating cyclical patterns. And when you're able to look at the world, look at the micro and the macro, look at the cosmos, you realize that we're actually in such a grander story than what we might actually be perceiving at our micro level of our mundane lives. So there's a kind of a bigger story going on for humanity, for this planet. And yeah, you're right. There is a massive wave of transformation sweeping the planet. It's like you can't deny it now. There's visible signs. People that were used to having quite accustomed or comfortability doing their job and having their status and their identity. And they were on the real clear train tracks in life. Those people are freaking out now because there is such a deeper call in our hearts to unify more and more with our soul, to unify more and more with our divinity. And it's like you can't pull the brakes on that anymore. And so this is the time in which we find ourselves in. There are forces coming from the cosmos. There are forces at play that are from our planet, our ley lines, our magnetic grids now, our energetic templates. And then also the human body has beautiful systems built into it, our DNA, our Akashic records. So all of these factors are ramping up and kind of, I call it coming online. And now there's just, we're dialed in. It's like, as soon as we wake up, we're like, whoa, this is not what I thought it was. And yeah, I've personally been through that. I know you have as well. And this is what some people call the dark night of the soul. There's more though. It's like you don't just go through that and then you're healed and you're don't kind of become enlightened and you get ascension master status. There's mini openings, there's mini breakthroughs all the time. This is a continual evolution of humanity to really reach the heights of our magnificence, of what we're actually capable of creating And essentially at the end, well, there is no end. It's just an infinite field of light to play in. But we're really now maturing humanity, understanding that we are actually very, very powerful creators. That this actually doesn't happen our lives by default. That we can actually craft our lives and really assume the position of creator. And that's a big piece to embody. It's a big piece to even believe that we are that powerful. And so, yeah, this is what I teach. This is where I am now in my own life, in my personal life, and this is what I'm here to remind people. That's a mini crash course, condensed version.
I feel like that opens so much, and this piece about the creator, this is something that interests me so deeply as a species, as humanity, because I believe when we tap into this creator consciousness, it's when we actually begin to able to shift from survival consciousness into a more thriving level of consciousness. And for a lot of people, they can be stuck in the grind, in the straight line of like, I'm going after the nice house, the family, and then retire and then finally do what I want. Like that was the railroad tracks, which there was a lot of safety in that, but it was about survival. It was about just getting by and making it to the next day. So as we're shifting into more of this creator consciousness, I see that coming online on the planet with people like ourselves, where it's like, oh my God, we are taking responsibility for our lives. We're recognizing that, hey, I am creating what's in my life and I'm the one responsible. What other shifts do you see at play when as we as a species begin to shift from that more survival dominant consciousness to more of this creator consciousness?
Really great question. And so, yeah, the survival kind of phase that humanity have been in relates to the lower chakras. And so that is like the base. That is, yeah, the survival of the species. It's the procreation. It's the basic needs being met. And so that talks to the base, the sacral, and the solar plexus. But now, as we continue the ascension process, we're like, hey, there's a lot more faculties to the human body. So now we're, as a collective consciousness, raising up now more into the heart, the throat, yeah, the third eye. These are the higher level chakras, and they open up more creative portals, like creativity, invention, innovation, new modalities and new ways, new systems of doing life. And so this is what I call the energetic Renaissance era. There's a renaissance happening of great artistry, of great scientists, of great astronomers, of great storytellers coming back to humanity, because it's the creative aspect that you need to find solution. We're not going to find solutions if we keep repeating the systems and the structures that are already in existence. I mean, we can fine tune them, we could improve upon them, but I believe there's actually a bigger call for humanity is like, do we have the courage to have so much creativity in our lives that we're ready to put like the old book of humanity down and actually begin to rewrite a whole new book? And we're all co-authors on that. There's a genius spot for you. There's a genius spot for me. There's a genius spot and a soul's highest mission for every single person on the planet. And it's like, can we all just like have the courage to step into that co-authorship role and actually really script something incredibly beautiful, extraordinary, powerful for humanity and the planet? And if we actually give that mission a crack, like even if we fail, even just making the attempt is like, would be epic. I'm like, sign me up for that party. I want to go to that mission. I want to go to that party. And so for me, it's like, rather than focusing on the old, rather than focusing on the restrictive, of the pain, of the suffering, my eyes now and my heart is just so focused on the potentiality of greatness here. And I'm just so dialed into that it's inevitable. It must happen. It must occur. I may see it in my lifetime, I may not, but the sense that it is inevitable and it will be returned and restored to this planet, that this humanity will get to experience peace, is just fun. Like, that's fun, that's exciting. And when we reach those heights again of humanity, it's like all of the neighboring planets and galaxies will be so interested in us. They'll be like, oh, planet Earth is kind of kicking some goals now, and they'll come closer to us and they'll want to communicate with us. They're like, oh, they're like doing some good stuff now. I'm curious. I want to see what they've been able to master. So that opens up, the whole galactic conversation, that we do have brothers and sisters and neighboring planets, just as we have a neighbor here where we live and where we reside in our homes. That's the micro. The macro of that is that we have neighboring planets as well that are very interested. We're a little bit nosy with our neighbors. We like to know what they're up to. And it's the same thing out there in the cosmos.
I felt when you were talking, then so many different threads, so many conversations open, and I'm like, I want to touch on all of them. So we'll see what we can actually do here. And like when you were speaking about the shift in consciousness, the piece that lands for me is our consciousness has evolved from more of a linear, like, progress at the moment. It's one step, then the next, and then the next. And this shift you're talking about as we move up the chakras is actually shifting into a more of an exponential growth. It's allowing more and more to come online quicker and quicker. This is why we're going into the quantum field. This is why we're actually connecting to the energetics, the timeline shift, and that is capable in this lifetime, because it's like, oh, it's just here. I can actually take a step into that and open that portal, and I can let go a lot of that. But in that, there is a period where for a lot of people, there's this discomfort of, like, when they step out of one reality into another, or if they're letting go of the old linear way of growth of, I need to do this, then I need to do this. This is more of like, if I'm working, I'm going to work for a year, then get a promotion, then work for another year and get a promotion so I can earn more money. In the new way, it's like, oh, there's actually growth that doesn't need that linear step. There's an exponential degree that can happen there. But people often, because they're stuck in a certain structure, they come against the fear, the collapse of that old structure, and they can get stuck in that fear that stops them from stepping into that new reality, new timeline. So it's unfortunate. So I'll just plug this up. How much did you catch in that last
Yeah,
one?
I got to opening the portal. I'm so sorry. I think it was me. I'm pretty sure. That's all right. It'll marry up in the editing. You can just
Yeah,
trim it.
it will work perfectly.
We were
I'm
talking
just
about moving up the chakras, yeah, and this
mm,
is becoming those portal time being not linear.
mm,
Mm.
yeah. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with it and see where I end up. Yeah, cool. Mm. So when we're opening that portal and going beyond their linear growth. There's a lot of fear that can come up for a lot of people where it's like, I'm kind of stuck in the structure, but to go into the exponential, I need to step outside of the current structure of reality. And there's this period of unknown, which is often can be associated with the dark night of the soul, especially when someone does that for the first time. But can you explain that process and that period where someone is in that unknown, where it's like, I'm hitting all the resistance, all the condition, and all the beliefs that then allows them to step into that new way of reality that allows the expansion?
Yeah, this is such an important piece, and this is such a crucial time in the awakening process. And this is when you need support. You need people, you need guides, you need mentors to hold you through this process. Because essentially what's happening is, yeah, you're coming up the chakras and you touch into the heart. And it's the heart that opens up the beautiful rainbow bridge. It's a gateway up into the higher potentiality of the human. And when we touch into the heart, we're actually invited to feel. And that can be very scary for someone that likes predictability, that likes to have all their I's dotted and their T's crossed. And they were thought, okay, well, I just go to university, I get this job, and I follow along with the current construct. When you do that and it no longer works for you, and you're kind of traveling through the gateway of the heart, you are actually invited to feel. And that is the overwhelming process there. We're not that great as a species of actually feeling our world. And so this is where this is when the tears start to flood. Yeah, we might go and experience childhood trauma. We revisit perhaps old paradigms or old belief systems that no longer serve us anymore. And it is meant to shake the system. It is meant to rattle. This is why we use rattles in healing, because it's meant to arise and kind of disperse the gross energy. And so this is what's happening. Yeah, support, care, grounding. And actually, the avenue of creativity is so helpful in those stages of healing, of awakening. This is why then the creative kind of aspects become more intriguing. It's like, well, I'll take up journal writing. Yeah, I've just got to process what I'm going through. Got so much grief in my system. It's like, I just need to write it out. I might have to sing it out. I might have to move it out of my body. So usually there's a kind of a real deep invitation for the individual to feel for the first time on a big level, I'm speaking here. And then usually the doorway to creativity opens up here as well. And then as soon as we begin to kind of excavate deeper into our truth, excavate deeper into the authentic nature of who we are, your life will then begin to look very differently, because now you're using the building blocks of authenticity to actually build and craft your life. And then the dreamer kind of comes in. It's like, wow, well, what's possible? What's possible? I just did that career choice because it's what the career counselor told me at high school, or it's what my dad did, so I just followed in the footsteps of my father. So it's a very big transitional time. My heart goes out to people. I remember it personally very well. It doesn't look like anyone else's. It's such an individual journey. There are parts of my own kind of deep uncovering where it was a very private and solo journey. And then there were times when I'm like, okay, this is beyond me. This is beyond my resources. I need sisterhood. I need a wise woman. I need a yoga teacher or whatever. So it's very normal also. I really want to normalize this process for people and celebrate it, because it's a massive gift to go through that process. And essentially it kind of becomes the hero's journey. This is the alchemical process of turning lead into gold. And usually it's the density, the trauma, the abuse, the grief. That's the lead. And then you actually get to put that lead to good use. And through the processes of purification, of elimination, of refinement, there's an elegance to this eventually. You may not feel it when you're going through it, but there is an elegance the more you continue this journey, and it really then gets to become a dance.
There's two pieces there that I really want to iterate, like especially this normalization of this process. Because for me, when I went through it, I had a book called uh, I can't remember what it was. It was a book by Stanislav Grof, and it spoke to psychosis and spiritual awakenings and their similarities. And I felt like I was going crazy, and I was so scared to go crazy. But it was the disruption in my field that allowed me to actually leave a lot of my old life behind and begin building one from a more authentic place. So if you're feeling like that, know that that's part of the process. It is at times feels like, oh, I am going crazy. Like I felt that. And the normalization of our world crumbling is like, oh, okay, we can be held in that in community. And this is why the importance of support, of mentors is so powerful, because it is something that's hard to comprehend until you fully experience it, and that collapse. And know that it does get easier. Like Myra's shared, you've shared that it happens continuously. Like this path never truly stops, but the refinement, the elegance does slowly start. It's like at the start, it's very big waves of like, woo! And then the waves start to flatten out, and maybe there's a big one every now and then, but you learn how to ride them better. So just their importance, if you're like, oh my God, I've started and now it never ends, just know you can have grace in this and you can trust the process. I think that's such an important point of this conversation.
Yeah, Dean, and I just want to add too is that there's biochemical functions that are different going on in your body at this time. And one of the things is that the executive function of your brain is not, it's not getting the energy, because the body knows that it's going through this process. And so it redistributes its energy and its attention into other cells of the body. It sends it into a trauma healing response. And I love using the word depression, but it actually means deep rest. That's what depression means. It's like you do have to unplug from the world you built, and you need to take deep rest. You're actually in a deep healing phase. Now, when an individual heals, the body is not sending the energy to the frontal cortex of the brain. So your ability to make decisions and execute clarity and make decisions quickly it's just not possible. It's not possible. So it's so important for the individual not to put those expectations on yourself. You know, I'm going to share a personal story, but when I deeply went through my first POP, I was in a public setting. It was not comfortable. I was very embarrassed, and I had no idea what was going on. And my body went into, I'd say, a mild, continuous shake. It was hard for me to walk. I could not think clearly. I eventually got myself into a public bathroom, and I literally just sat on the toilet, and I'm just like, what is this? The next day, I had a part-time job, and I was living in Melbourne. I had to go out of the house, catch the tram, which I've done 100 times before, and turn up to my office job. For the life of me, I could not get up, get dressed, and hop on that tram. I was like, what is wrong here? Like, how can an individual do that 100 times and not be and I actually had this weirdest thought that there were, and this talks to the psychoses part. I thought there were FBI agents or like Secret Service agents that were just going to follow me from the home to the tram stop. And then they'll hop on the tram and follow me to the place of my employment. Never, ever have I ever had that thought before. But it was as if the world was out and against me. I've never felt that before. This is the So know that you are having unusual thoughts. It's not the truth of who you are. It's actually just the dismantling of our minds. And it's a good thing. There's gems, there's gifts when we can actually excavate to this magnificence and the authentic, truthful nature of who we are. So yeah, there's a weird story for you and your listeners.
Oh, I love that. I thank you for sharing that, because I get this image of, like, when we're in these states and we're going through this process, there is these, like, almost this bubbling that is occurring, that alchemy where some of the conditions are bubbling up to the surface and they're revealing themselves in the mind, where it's like, it could be thinking FBI agents are following us or whatever it is. It could emerge as another way, but this is the underlying beliefs and the conditions and the structures that are actually clearing out of our system. So actually being able to be with that process and allowing them to move through does allow that healing for us to then step into that new reality, which is so, so beautifully.
Mm-hmm. There's just another piece I'd like to share, because you spoke about that linear pathway. And what I want to add is, when you get up into the heart space, when you begin to access some more of your creativity, unlock and kind of unleash at the throat chakra, what you begin to experience is this beautiful cyclical nature of time. And this, what I call it, the timeless dimension. And this is why it's so important for humanity and individuals to do what they love. Because when we're doing what we love, time stands still. And we actually cross over the rainbow bridge of our hearts, and we actually drop into this beautiful portal of the timeless dimension. That's why you ask a creative or ask someone when they're in the zone, in they're playing sports. It's like, I could have just done that all night long. It's like time stands still. I didn't look at the clock. I didn't even eat. And before I know it, it's 2 a.m. in the morning. And I'm like, yes, I love hearing stories like that, because now you're playing in the field of the timeless dimension. And so, yeah, this is when we're really experiencing the cyclical nature, the multi-dimensional nature of our existence. And this is all inbuilt in the human body. Like, all the tools, all the faculties that we're desiring are all inbuilt. It's like all the hardware of the human body is there. And this is beautiful rising of the light quotient on the planet. This is the rising of the consciousness. The more and more we rise, the more these multidimensional faculties will open up to the body, to the human. And then it just becomes like a candy store then. I'm just like, I feel like I'm a child in a candy store now. And then you hear these things about, telekinesis, levitation, manifestation, magic, those sorts. They then become actually very tangible and real, rather than it being this far off kind of fantasy story. they start to get closer and closer and closer, and you're like, holy moly, I think I actually now know when they say Jesus walked on water, how that could actually be possible. And the science is just catching up to this. This is so exciting. Is like the world of science, the scientific communities, and the spiritual masters, and the possibility of the awakening process. They just are beginning to merge and merge and merge, and they're going to cross over soon in so many more ways that we've never expected.
Oh, this like brings me to like a little segue that I want to touch on with you, because I know this is close to your heart, and I also see it with this rise of consciousness, this shift in consciousness, this reconnection. And you spoke of the renaissance of the modern age, and I also view this as a reconnection to previous times in history. And I know one close to your heart is Atlantis, and we've we noticed there's a reemergence of like connection to these points in time where it's like, oh, like this is relevant now again. We're coming through that cycle where this is coming back in. So I'm wondering if you could share, like, firstly, a bit about Atlantis for those that might not know, like, what you mean when we're talking about Alantis, but also like how that reemergence is occurring, and the importance of that in this period.
Yeah, this is my jam. Very excited. Yeah, so Atlantis, I'll go back because it relates to when those experiences become more and more available to the human, of when they're dropping into that timeless dimension. And you really are touching into the Akashic records now and the DNA. And so for those of your listeners that don't know what the Akashic records is, it's a Sanskrit word. Sanskrit, Akash means sky. And it is like the great library held in the sky. This is what is known as the astral plane as well. And it is stored all through little light parcels and pockets that are tightly, elegantly packed into our DNA. And so through my own healing journey, through my own creativity, all of this began to open up to me. And I started having very real soul remembrances. It was not like walking into a movie, it wasn't like looking at a movie. It was like I was in the movie. And this is with no stimulants. This is just a direct access of a remembrance through the awakening of my cellular structure. Atlantis is an incredible past civilization that used to be here on this planet. And so even the ley lines of our planet remember Atlantis. The humans that were there in the time of Atlantis are beginning to remember it and awaken to it as well. And it's just like if we were to do ancient history class, we would be able to read texts on ancient Egypt. We could be able to read texts on, the magnitude of the Roman Empire when it was beginning to kind of claim more land across the planet. This is what Atlantis is as well. It's just a longer time ago. That's all. And so some people think Atlantis is at the bottom of the ocean off the Greek islands. Other people are like, no, it's like the Celtic mountains call to me. Other people are like, no, it's in southern France. The reason people have those experiences is because Atlantis was the whole globe at the time. It was dependent on where you were residing in Atlantis. And so I could, for example, I could ask someone now, someone in Tokyo, Japan, what's it like to live on planet Earth at 2024? And then I could go to the outback of Australia at the Nullarbor and ask someone there that have very different accounts of what it was like to live in 2024. And so this is where we get the variation of people's own personal journeys with Atlantis. So it's so important that you trust yourself and share what it is that you remember. It doesn't have to look and sound like what other people are talking about. So I always just like, that's so important. So how it came to me was I started having, like my own dreamscape begin to change. And also I dream a lot in the waking state as well. So I'd call them daydreams. They're just very, very tangible though. But the pace really began to accelerate when again, I was working in Melbourne in a job that I really disliked, but the pay rate was good. And to get relief from the corporate job, I would travel 2 blocks down on my lunch break down Burke Street and take a break in a theosophical bookstore. So it's a new age bookstore. And I would just walk the aisles of this bookstore. There were crystals, there were oracle decks available. And you kind of got to understand, it's like I wasn't even doing any workshops at this point. I was very corporate still, very straight and narrow. But I just found relief in stores like this. I didn't know why. I didn't particularly overthink it. And then one particular day, I was feeling very low. I was feeling very stuck in my life, very disconnected, and a book literally flew off the shelf. I didn't knock it, like my arms were nowhere near the aisles, they were nowhere near the bookshelves, and I kind of even looked through the bookshelf, but it didn't have an opening. It was a solid back, because I thought, oh, maybe another worker was on the other side and like accidentally pushed this book through. No, the book literally flew off the shelf, landed exactly on the floor where my next step was going to be, and it was facing cover up in the correct direction, and the title of the book said Discover Atlantis. I was like, okay, this is pretty full on. I'm going to trust this sign. And I'm looking around seeing like, did anyone else see that? I had a moment to myself of just like gathering my thoughts, and I picked the book up and I purchased it. I put it in my handbag, and after work that evening, I read it on the tram home, and I've never cried so much in my life. It's like you could not, you couldn't take that book off me. I was consuming every single page, and I just cried, and I didn't know why I was weeping. It just felt very familiar, and I had no idea why it felt familiar. So that is kind of the opening then of a whole chapter of my life. But what I loved about Atlantis, it saw humanity in its brilliance. We had such a heightened understanding of science, of technology. We were all incredibly talented at healing, creativity, song. We were living in natural alignment with the planet. The architecture was amazing. What we built was so just so incredibly beautiful, and also supported by the cosmos. There was such a deep relationship at that time of knowing who our star brothers and sisters were. And so there was such an open and sharing of information. And yeah, that I just began to remember more and more of those faculties and what is possible for the human. And I really see now those that have a remembrance of Atlantis, we are needed. We're needed now on the planet, because we are revisiting this heightened time again, of where there's an opportunity for humanity to have great brilliance of manifestation, great sharing of healing, of when we can actually live in harmony with nature, in harmony with the animal kingdom, in harmony with the crystalline kingdom. And we're revisiting that again. So this is why it's known as the Atlantean cycle. And those that were there at Atlantis, they're getting the hits again through their DNA. It's like, oh, remember that healing ability. It's like, oh, I remember using my voice in that way. You know, we are only scratching the surface on what sound healing can do for people. Yeah. So that's a bit about it.
That is phenomenal. Thank you for that. Like I love being able to tune into this more. It for me is that point where it's like, oh, more and more Atlantis codes are coming into my world, especially getting to know you more and more, and I can feel the resonance of that, of the activation and the opening. One of the things I really consider when anytime I see a cycle of with it, whether it be in my own life or in the greater world, I feel like there's a lesson to be learnt there as well, because we know Atlantis also had its fall and its destruction, and I feel like there was a lesson to learn within that. And as we're coming into this re-emergence of these remembrance, that what does it feel like that lesson is that we need to learn this time to continue on without going through that same cycle again?
I can feel the fear arising in my body as you ask me this question. I'm like, please do not shoot the messenger. I was chatting to Dean before we were recording, and I'm like, this trips me out because I've been persecuted over and over again and lost my life for talking about what it is that I share now. And it is so mind-boggling that I now get celebrated. I now, like, there's interest in people knowing about this now. And I'm like, oh, like, so you mean I get to talk about this and go home safely? It's like, wow, that's a little bit unusual for my nervous system. But yeah, so that you're correct. So there was the Great Fall of Atlantis, and that is approximately 26,000 years ago. And yeah, so what essentially happened at those kind of closing chapters of that civilization is there was a rise in the technocrats, there was a rise in the scientific community, and not to blame them, like they had a good, interesting theory, and the theory is could science enhance the natural organic evolution process of the human? Could science enhance the awakening process? And we see 100% that theme play out in this current reality again, is like, can science, let's say manipulation of the DNA, let's say advanced kind of surgery practices, can that enhance the awakening process, or perhaps the extension of life form? And they got a rude awakening in Atlantis because the answer is no. You can't interrupt the natural organic order of things that God, the universe, source has created. You can't tamper with that system. The reason you can't tamper with that system is that we are all responsible for greater things. It's like, if we do too much disruption on planet Earth has her own responsibility to hold her balance, because she's part of a solar system. So if we throw planet Earth off her axis too much, that's at the detriment of the other planets in our solar system. So it's like we're putting other things in threat. So that will not occur. It won't disrupt the system on such a grand level like that. So yeah, Atlantis did fall because they manipulated and tampered too much through the mind, through the science. They wanted to compartmentalize and take this kind of linear path, and they took it to the nth degree of genetic engineering, genetic manipulation, and it disrupt the equilibrium balance of our planet. So our axes tilted too abruptly in response to that. And then the tectonic plates on the planet then move. Then you have a big dispersion of lots of volume of water. And this is what people remember. Like, they remember the great floods. This is Noah's Ark story. The reason he got 2 by 2 by 2 is to preserve the animal kingdom. And they needed to mate so we could have animals again. So it's a very, Atlantis has a very abrupt ending to it. It's not comfortable. There's a lot of, personally speaking, I was very, very angry. And I really felt responsible that I messed up. And how could I just let that happen? It was such a brilliant, magnificent, colorful, harmonious time. And it's like, why would you screw that up? And so there's a lot of wounding still about the fall of Atlantis. So don't be surprised if that comes up as well. I've worked with a lot of women where they have such a huge fear of water. And it's like, when I connect and explain this out to them, they're like, oh my God, my life makes so much sense now. I remember being there and feeling so chewed up that we did that to the planet. And I'm like, no wonder you have a fear. She just like cannot. Now she can be in water. Her relationship to water is entirely different now because she's got 2 children. It's like she needs to be in the water with her children because her children love the water. So now, fast forward to 2024, we're seeing this rise now of science, technology, DNA again. So artificial intelligence is on the rise. So we've got to be very careful with what we decide to do next with the rise of technology and sciences. And my advice would be, because I remember screwing it up last time, is like, it must be in harmony with nature. There's no other way around this. It must be unified with a sense of peace and reverency and balance in the grand. We are responsible for the safe keep of this planet. We are responsible for the safe keeping of this humanity. Because there are other neighboring planets, there are other neighboring humanities that would like to be kept safe as well.
Oh, I feel this peace and the deep reverence that we need to hold as humanity to actually allow ourselves to move forward, because I can see as a collective there is a lot in where we are operating in the same behaviors. We're going after the next thing, we're chasing, we're seeing what we can create, but it's not coming from that centered place or that peaceful place. It's like, okay, how can I control, how can I dominate, or how can I get something without given anything in return and bypassing the laws of nature? And it does feel like that is a question of our age, is actually how can we bring harmony into this? And I feel like this message, this remembering is coming in this time to help us remember that exact thing, because we have been here before, we have been through this process, and anytime we go through a same cycle, the same things will emerge until we're willing to meet with it. And for me, it's asking myself these questions of, oh, where am I trying to control, dominate, instead of steward, care for, and give life to? Where is that still present in myself? And like I felt the ripple as you were talking of how Earth ripples out into the solar system rippling out into the galaxy. Like that is all part of it, and on the individual, how we ripple out into the collective. And this is where I feel so much of this work is aimed in this century, is to bring it back to the self, so we can take that responsibility, so we can take ownership and remember, hey, this time we can choose another way. This time we can choose a different direction for our species, for the planet, and bring about a harmony that we know in our hearts is possible, that we all feel and all long for, because we feel it and we know it's possible.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And the more you evolve, the more you'll connect in with the fifth dimensional living. And the fifth dimension is that of unity consciousness. And so the lens comes off your own individual life, and it gets cast wider and wider and wider to take in the community, to take in the wider nation, to take into account the whole planet. And then we take into account that we're actually responsible for the healthy upkeep of our solar system. That's all just a natural byproduct of living in the fifth dimensional field. And that's not something you have to work at. It's not something you're focused on. It's just a natural evolution of that awakening process. Yeah, 100%.
I feel like I have one last question before we wrap up here, and it's about this of the fifth dimensional living, because I see a lot of people when they come into this world of service, there is this sacrifice, this self-sacrifice, and believing that is actual service, where it's like, oh, if I can give myself to the collective, then I can serve something greater. And I do not agree with that at all. And I know it's actually the opposite way. But is there a point you can share here around how we actually need to honor the self to bring about that reality where we can be in service to the greater collective as well?
Yeah, such an intelligent question. And look, it's basic physics, if you really want to break it down onto the base level. But it's like you need to master your own energetic field first. You need to master your emotional body. You need to get in control of your astral plane. These are all extensions and bodies, the etheric, the astral, the light body, the crystalline body that we are. They're all housed in our Merkaba, which is like a sacred geometric structure that holds our physicality into place and all of our energy bodies. You've got to get that in order. You need that cleaned up. That's part of the dark night of the soul, is like, clean up your mess. No judgment. We've all got it. We've all come in with it. But it's like, get your house in order. Then you get some maturity over that. You get some kind of runs on the board. And then you realize, my gosh, my internal landscape creates the outer world. And you're like, whew, sit with that for a couple of years. I'm like, pressure's on now. Like, perform, Myra, like, get better at this. And I sat with that for several years and I fall off for sure. But it's like, when you get this in order, take care of your body, take care of your mind, take care about the words that come out of your mouth. They're so powerful, so powerful. Then you realize, okay, I can actually begin to change my street, change my community, have a ripple effect out into the clients that I serve. I have such a ripple impact on social media now. I'm like casting high vibe light through the internet, through my mental thought patterns, and on it goes. And that is really how you serve. Is you're 100% correct. You have to serve yourself first at such a deep honoring level, not the self-absorbed level. People go, oh, you're being selfish, Myra. No, it's actually just basic science. Let's normalize this process of actually taking care of ourselves. It's okay to actually have boundaries, communicate clearly for what it is that you stand for. But we're just so out of practice. That's all it is. It's not because we can't do it. It's just unfamiliar. And that's my leadership role, is like, at the start, I was nervous as heck to go first. Like, what are people going to think of me? But then it got to a point, is like, if I don't lead, if I don't go first, I'm going to be sitting on the sidelines, looking left and right, still looking at other people, expecting them to get up and to do the job. And I just got bored. I just got over myself. And I'm like, oh, I've only got a certain level of patience. And then I'm like, okay, I'm taking a step into the game. It's game on. I'm going to have to take, and it's so interesting about leadership. It's not given to you. I thought it was leadership. I was like, oh, you get an award or a medal or someone invites you. No, my gosh, leadership is claimed. It's taken. It's claimed by the person that just puts their hand up and goes first. But the internal energetic system must be robust. It must be strong. It must be built on a solid foundation, and then claim that leadership role and watch your community, watch your levels of service just skyrocket and go up and up. It's actually a natural byproduct. The service is a natural opening of the level of ownership you can have over your own life. So I'm a bit fired up now, Dean.
I love this. I love, like, this is where we're finishing up, because this is one of the biggest things. Like, as soon as we start to recognize that fear of being an imposter, who am I? People can pause, and then it's like, cool, yes, have that moment, but your mission calls to you, and there's a point where you have to say, I'm done with that, because the world is asking for each of us to step in. I can't do the job of you can't do the job of me. We each have our own role. And like, I want my brothers and sisters with me. I'm like, hey, come on, start playing. Like, let's get in this game. There's so much to experience and explore. And I see the pain that can happen when we're like, who am I? Or what do I have to offer? And it's like, you have so much. And so I feel that as such powerful piece. And I feel that is such a beautiful piece to begin wrapping up on.
Yeah, beautiful, powerful note to end on. And I'm so glad we reached that height in our discussion. And it's just a reminder for everyone listening that we are just so much more powerful than we realize. And it's not because you can't do it. It is just, it's unfamiliar at the start. There's a level of building a solid foundation and energetically adjusting the thermostat of the body, and it will begin to accommodate more light, more wisdom, more remembrance. And then when you're up and running, yes, there are challenges along the way. There will always be, but it's like at least you're working now on more resources. It's like you've got more things to actually draw upon to help you on your own journey.
Myra, this has been such a beautiful conversation. Now, I know you have a retreat coming up, and I know you have other beautiful things. I'd love if you could share anything in particular, or anything else you feel the audience should know about yourself.
Yeah, the Vanuatu retreat, that's in October, 11th to the 18th of October 2024. That really speaks to people with a strong Akashic remembrance over Atlantis and Lemuria. Been to Vanuatu 6 times. It's an epic portal over there. The retreats are 7 days and 7 nights. They're very immersive, transformational. The women and the men, usually the feedback is that we step out of this reality and we go into a portal of activation and growth. So that is October. For those that really resonate with Egypt, we're in Egypt at the end of November into the first week of December, going through all the beautiful sacred temple sites there along the Nile. And if women and men actually, if you're really wanting quite focused mentorship, I do one-on-one and also the Gateway program, which for those that are really wanting to marriage the ascension process, build a beautiful, I use fifth dimensional and quantum energetics. So it's a very different landscape for healers and coaches.
Myra, on mine, you just broke up quite deeply then, so I'm not sure if it recorded. I heard gateway and then it broke off.
Sure. So Gateway is the 6-month group mentorship program, and that's really the marriage of ascension with enterprise. So for those people wanting to build a business, an enterprise of light, that's the place you'd want to be, is the Gateway 6-month group program. We use a lot of quantum 5D business energetics, which are just entirely different to the old paradigm of doing business on the planet.
Myra, thank you so much. For anyone that is interested, all that information will be in the show notes below. And you can also connect with Myra on Facebook. It's Myra Medhurst. On Instagram, how would they connect with you there?
Yeah, Myra Medhurst, MyraMedhurst is my full name on Instagram handle. Same there. And yeah, Facebook profile. Myra Medhurst as well.
Myra, thank you so much for joining the Wyrd Way. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you here, have this conversation, receive your transmission and your golden light. Thank you so much, sister.
Oh, thank you, dear brother. Thank you for the opportunity.
This is the Wyrd Way, and we're signing off.